I'll wait for everybody. Hello, everyone. I hope you guys have had a beautiful week. And I know it's Wednesday, and I know the week still has to go on, but I hope so far it's brilliant. It's okay. It's chilled. Whichever way you want it to go, whichever way you'd prefer it to go. I hope that you've had that kind of week. So today we're discussing the art forms. But before I go there, I know that I haven't been able to do any drawings for you guys or post on my latest artwork in terms of sketches, and I am sorry for that. I've been just a little bit worked up, a lot of stuff going on, but I will definitely make sure that I do draw and post. I will definitely find some inspiration and share it with you. As I was saying, the art forms is what we're discussing today, and my research is based on Google and a place online called Aardvark, which it sounds very weird because when I'm reading this name, it's like, oh my god, it almost sounds like I'm cursing somebody. But anyway, the art forms. So, art is a very broad subject. It covers music, television, theater, painting, and all the other stuff. So, the 7 forms, which I will talk about, is painting, sculpture, architecture, literature, cinema, theater, and music. And these 7 art forms are not, however, the only art forms, but these are the main art forms. And I will be, discussing it week by week as we go so that we can break it apart and see how it goes. And I think maybe you might find something interesting, so will I, because I feel like with art, just like history, it evolves, it changes, it's beautiful, it's complicating at the same time, it's chaotic. And I think that's what makes it fun, because it's based on emotions, circumstances, and what people are going through, whether it's political, whether it's spiritual, whether it's just a self-development and growth as well, which is very important because it's also how we express ourselves and history. So it's how the past generations and back in the day, the hunter gatherers would show us how they lived. It's a form of keeping history going. It's a form of keeping history going. And yeah, these are the ones that are the 7 main, but there's others like the fine, the performance, and the digital, the performing arts and the digital arts too, which I feel like it's like I said, there's more to art. It's a very broad subject, and it's one that you can break down into so many sectors, so many genres. Yes, genres, that's the word I was looking for. And it's very interesting how when you look at art and you find that, so myself, when it comes to art, I find that I love to express the sad parts of life. It's just sadness has its beauty. Everything has its beauty. Rage, grief. It all has its beauty. It all has its time. And the best way I find is painting for me. I mean, drawing, painting, anything on a hard surface, like they said, canvas, or some would, the floor or the wall, whichever way that artist would like to perform their artwork. But there's other forms like I can't remember what that art form is. I think it's performing where you know, you would have a display of something. And I remember a few years ago watching a video of an artist. She was doing a performance piece on the street, and she was wearing a top, an old top or something, like all covered, and anybody had to walk by and cut a piece of her clothing, and it was an art form. And golly, she's brave for it. She's brave. My favorite art form is painting. It's painting and drawing. That's my favorite one. I haven't been able to, I would love to explore the sculpture. Literature, I've tried. I'm actually good with writing poems, but I find that poems are best when you go and reach deep. Like, deep. Arts, painting too, you can get deep, but I feel like with the literature, the poems, the stories, it has to be deep. It has to be, you have to feel, I don't know how to explain it, part, and in the moment. You have to, yeah, like I said, you have to feel part of that word, that literature that you're reading or writing, and it has to be one with you, which I feel like is the same with painting for me. But I feel like literature is harder because I feel like I need to be in another realm to get it right and to get that feeling out. But yeah, it's different for everyone. So let's go on. Painting is one of the well-known forms, as you know, and your Vincent van Gogh, your Claude Monet, your Leonardo da Vinci, just to name a few, and your Picasso, just to name a few. And when you look at those amazing people, they all had their sorrows, their joys, which probably brought them into their art, whatever they were trying to get out of their chests or express. And some of it is actually political, which I find very interesting, and others are historical. Like, when art puts you in a place where you're like, okay, you know what, we're going through that in society. I can get where this artist is coming from, which is another thing I'd like to do. I'd like to actually go and search the modern artists now in terms of how they're expressing what's going on in today's world, which I'm sure we've seen a lot of ads that are also part of art and other ways of showing what is going on, which I feel like it's like a footprint. It's writing and saying we were here. This is what we experienced. This is how it was, and this is how we felt, and this is how we also dealt with it and endured it and went through it, and whether we conquered or whether it defeated us, whatever the situation, that is what art is. And the painting is one of those forms. So I'm thinking I wanted to ask you guys, in terms of when we dive into the painting, I would love to know, which kind of artist do you want us to, talk about? Who do we start with first? And how deep do we dive with the painters? Because I feel like there's so many. And I'm not just going to talk about the famous ones and dead ones, but we want to talk about the ones today too. The ones that you feel they speak to you. The ones that make you, whether it's relax, whether it's feel sad, whether it's enrage, but what makes you feel who you are at that time. That piece, when I was in my art class with Lily Mark back in the day, there was a colleague artist of mine that she loved her abstract, and they were so beautiful. They were amazing. But you know what? Abstract was not for me. But when she touched the canvas, I'm telling you, I would buy that. I would buy her abstract. but I'm not an abstract artist, but I would buy hers. So yeah. Well, my favorite. You know what? I don't really have any favorites. I feel like those who inspired me and my favorites, I don't know, hey, when it comes to favorites, I don't really have favorites. I feel like depending on if the art speaks to me and depending on how I'm feeling and how, let's say, you read um, the political artwork about, the wars, where they show the monarchy and, they try to paint them. Some of the artists were brutal. They paint them the way they were. But there was others that would try and paint them and edit them, like what we have when we have those edits that make us look good, and filters. Yeah, so back then when you didn't have a camera, a painter would come, paint your portrait, and if you were rich enough, you could just say to them, guys, just cut off the belly or add, I don't know, lashes or whatever they wanted back then. But back then, that sort of stuff was for the privileged. So when you talk about inspiring in artwork, I would say my favorite genre is the romantics, because the romantics dive deep into what was happening, and also they had the capability to make it look like it was beautiful. Like you'd see, they would paint a battlefield, but somehow they'd make it look like it's beautiful. Like it's, I don't know. They would invoke that. I'm looking for the word. That excitement for, oh, we're gonna win or we won. They would totally take away the ugliness of it in the portrait itself. They would make it look somehow majestic in a twisted way. But like I said, I'm more of an artist that is more on the romantic side. But we'll discuss that, because that's also one of the arts, one of the mediums. And then another thing about painting, it can be done with oil, watercolor, acrylic, but there's other things it doesn't limit it. Those are not the only limits. So you can go into chalk, pencil, dyes. Hey, you can get creative with it. As we can see, we've seen artists use tires today in this age. We've seen them use, things, other ways to present their artwork. And it's amazing and beautiful. And when you say art is in the eye of the beholder, that's what beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Yeah, that's what it is when you look at art. So what you find beautiful, someone else might not find it as beautiful. Whatever speaks to you might not speak to someone else. It's complicated like that, but it's complicated, chaotic, and beautiful in the same sense. That's how I would describe art, because it's got its own curves, its own sharpness, and its own rules, which are not exactly defined by society, so to speak. It can be, but sometimes it's not. I feel like sometimes society influences art, and sometimes art influences society. So it's vice versa, depending on the situation, I guess. But yeah, it's like that. So next, I hope you guys tell me what kind of artists you want us to talk about. And when it comes to painting, it's the painting one that we're starting with. So next week we will talk more about artists that painted, artists that went, whether they did or they're alive, or they're successful or they're not. But we want to dive into it and get to know what it was about, what they painted, And hey, if we can find the inspirations and dig deep into that too, and then maybe we can also do a vote on, which one was our favorite, let's make it a thing. But I'd love to have a bit of fun with these, and let me know what kind of artists you want us to talk about. That would be fun hearing your opinions. Thank you very much for your time, y'all. Have a beautiful night.